Hi there, welcome to Competitive Bargaining for Lawyers. My name's Peter Annis. I'm the designer of this course. Now, I think I should probably say a few introductory remarks about the course before I get going, why I'm doing it and what its focus is. The concept of a competitive bargaining for lawyers is a little bit of a misnomer in the sense that it suggests there may be special rules for lawyers. That's not the case. Competitive bargaining is a skill that everybody needs to a certain extent, but the reality is lawyers probably need it more. The concept that relates to lawyers, besides making sure that they understand the rules and how it works, is really related to some of the special ethical issues they have in dealing with clients and aspects of mediation. But by and large, the course is about competitive bargaining, so I don't want the title to mislead you. Why I did the course, why I'm providing this course, it comes from many years of being a litigation lawyer myself and a mediator and having participated in negotiations and many mediations. And I guess to a certain extent it comes from some of the research I've carried out with respect to competitive bargaining, particularly through a study I did for the federal government here in Canada. In the final analysis, my conclusion is that by and large we seem to have jumped over this issue of competitive bargaining in our instruction. By and large, you're going to hear me talking about the distinction between bargaining and negotiating. It's not a distinction that people really see and make out there in day-to-day, but for the purpose of this course and maybe the way the academics treat it, they are different. So the emphasis here is on the old-time win-lose bargaining, which is supposed to have been done to a certain extent by interest negotiating, getting to yes, win-win, mutual gains, and things like that. Having said that, I don't want people to think that this course is intended to denigrate the concept of interest negotiating and its achievements. I think it is a singular achievement in terms of moving forward and how we resolve disputes. But the bottom line is that there's a hole in most of lawyers' training with respect to bargaining, and it's essential. It's an essential skill. It's something that lawyers need to know. And why do I say that? I think because the reality is what lawyers do most of the time in their daily practice tends to be on the win-lose side of things. It tends to be competitive. Certainly if you're a solicitor doing a transaction, sale of business for your client, it tends to be pretty much win-lose. There's aspects of interest negotiating, and I'm going to talk about all that, but the fundamental premise there is pretty much win-lose. Litigators, which I see a lot of, they tend to be very much involved in a lot of win-lose circumstances. So it's very much part of a lawyer's daily trade. Having said that, what I see in terms of what's happening in mediations is that sometimes people don't have any training at all, but although most people in my business have picked up the essentials of somewhat of competitive bargaining, but they don't have the conceptual background. But very often where their training has come from, particularly the younger lawyers that have gone through the recent programs run by law schools and mediation courses, etc., tends to be very much on interest negotiating. And it's one of the essential things, and one of the problems that lawyers have when they have been trained in the win-lose, in the win-win side of things, is that when they get into a win-lose situation, they can be put at a disadvantage, because the reality is that there are advantages for if you're bargaining versus a negotiator. So these are some of the points I want to get across. Now, the course is basically divided into two modules. The first module is Foundations, which is what I'm going to do by video here. The videos are limited to what I call the essential stuff that everybody should really know. It provides the basis for us to go forward and to teach the second module, which I do live, which relates more to how to get better outcomes when you are competitive bargaining. So that the first module is going to consist of, after we do a little introduction on the attributes of what a good bargainer should be, we're going to talk about the bargaining, negotiating continuum, as I call it, and I think I've already made this point. It's essential not only for bargainers but also for negotiators to really understand the difference between the two, to make sure you're not confusing them. So I'm going to spend some time on that, because it's essential to being a good bargainer, to being defensive, because this course is very much a defensive course as well, that you have that fundamental understanding. The second section, I'm going to deal with the strategy and tactics of bargaining, which it's not rocket science, but I think people will be surprised, particularly if they come from the win-lose school, the win-win school, that is, of the differences that are there. And we'll talk about some of the tactics that are followed generally, not getting into in the same sort of detail we might in the advanced portion of the second module. And then I'm going to take you in section 3 right to the table. A lot of instructions, courses that are of this nature don't go straight to the table. They do a lot of preliminaries. My sense is that it's better to go to the table to see how offers are made back and forth, the concession bargaining, how we deal with impasse generally, and so that everybody sees what the basic rules are, because there are some basic rules out there and I see them not being followed on a daily basis. From there, I'm going to deal with this section, ethics and hardball tactics. And ethics is important when you get into bargaining, because the rules are based much more on deception than they would find in interest negotiating, as I'll point out to you, so that they're more challenging for lawyers. And certainly in Ontario we have some rules, and I don't think all the lawyers really understand some of the rules that do apply to them as professionals when they are bargaining. Anyway, from there I'm going to go on to hardball tactics, because I think they are essential. Everybody should understand what some of these hardball tactics are. And certainly the most important one is misrepresentations in line, but there's a whole bunch of them, how we use authority and how we screen, etc., etc. So that I think the lawyers out there, as their fundamental training, should have that understanding, and I'm going to run them through that. It's a what you call extreme influencing, if you like, but I'm going to put labels on things and try to make sure that the lawyers have that understanding of what a hardball tactic is, so they can label it and they can deal with it when they see it happening. And I'm going to finish up the first module with a video presentation, which I'm going to use from Mediation opening. It's a good example of what I would describe as a collaborative opening in a win-loss situation, and there's a few tips there, and it's generally for young lawyers. The second module, I'll just go into it now, because hopefully people who will have listened to this, participated in this video, will think of also taking the Enhancing Bargaining Outcome module. And we deal in that section, in that module, we start with the bargainer's mindset. It's a very important mindset, and attitude is extremely important for outcomes. As you can imagine, anything competitive, having the right mindset is key, and we deal with a number of things that relate to identify that mindset, and some tactics that can be used to basically instill a proper mindset as you go forward, to the extent that that's doable. The section 6, we talk about leverage and strategies of influencing. It's probably the most interesting section of the course, in the sense that we deal with factors of how people make decisions, how they are influenced, and some of the breakdowns, cognitive or emotional or whatever it is, that prevent us from seeing things properly, and the strategies that go around those. So it's both defensive and offensive. But the idea is that if you give you an understanding of some of these influencing factors, which are not hardball tactics, which are basically allowed and are part of both bargaining and negotiating, although much more in bargaining, I would think. Finally, in section 7 and 8, I get into bargaining in mediations. Mediations have become an important aspect of both bargaining and negotiating, and I give you some insights from the perspective of a mediator, and some of the rules that should apply, I think, for lawyers in dealing with mediators. And finally, I finish off the course with preparation for bargaining. It's a very good overview. It allows us to see all the points we've looked at during the course, how you work yourself up, and generally it's kind of like at the end of the course, if you can run yourself through these steps, generally you should be in pretty good position as you go forward. So it's a good summary. And finally, there's a bit of conclusion, which is more an encouragement for people to go forward. So why don't we get into the course now itself? To finish off the introduction, I've sort of created this one little section, special attributes of a good bargainer. And when we talk about special attributes, I mean, there's attributes for success that are out there generally. Number one is be prepared, be disciplined, have good emotional intelligence, good analytical skills, etc. I'm not talking about those attributes. I'm talking about the special attributes that I think that good bargainer, or a good negotiator should have. And I do this because I want to point out that the first one is knowledge of bargaining and negotiating fundamentals. I think that it's important. And it's something that everybody can do, and it's the starting point. And that's what this course is. This course is highly on the knowledge end of it. Teaching skills takes really time. You can do some simulation. This is not a course on simulation. It's really getting to understand so that people can understand what is happening as they go along, and what is the best way to approach. It's a kind of a rational approach. Much of negotiating and bargaining is intuitive. They will tell you that, but it's not all intuitive, and I don't think you can be a really good bargainer without really having a fundamental understanding of the fundamentals. So that's what the course centers on. And I guess one of my aims particularly is to kind of help young lawyers or inexperienced bargainers kind of come up to scratch pretty quickly on the defensive side. Anybody who knows sports, something like hockey, certainly we understand that you may not be able to have the skills on the other side, but if you can put in place the proper defensive mechanisms to a large extent, you can blunt some of the skill disadvantage. So there's a large defensive side to this course to help people to make sure they don't make egregious errors and they see the situation and understand it, and then be able to develop the mindset and the skills eventually to be able to deal with those problems. So as I'm emphasizing again that it's really a knowledge course. Mindset, we do deal with mindset in the second module, where we talk about how to enhance outcomes, and we've developed, there's been a lot of research in this whole area. One of the things that inspires this course is there has been a lot of research. And certainly there are, we have a better understanding of mindset, we have a better understanding of some of the training and the tactics that can be used to increase, to better your mindset and to deal with it once again defensively. But it's not a major portion of the course. And finally, the possession of bargaining skills, well, you have to put it to use. Let's face it, a skill is something that you develop, and to the point where eventually you've got that knowledge, you've got the motivation, you've got the right mindset, and you use it such that it becomes a habit, to use old Stephen Covey's definition of a habit. And that's where we're hoping that you'll end up, but you won't be there at the end of this course. I'm not suggesting you will be. But you should have a good foundation, and you should be in a position where you've got a lot better idea what's going on, and you will be able to end up being a much better bargainer or negotiator. At least that's my hope. So why don't we stop here, and we'll move on to the next module.